So since you're going to be researching and building a talk and argument, right? I think it's helpful to. Hey guys, you can get rid of your phones and your Chromebooks. You don't need them. But you'll be fine without them. Since we're building a TED talk and an argument, and you're going to present, I think it's useful to look at some talks. All right, so we're gonna analyze this. It's not technically a TED talk, although this guy did give a very famous TED talk. Those of you who had me sophomore year, you may remember I went over this in depth. Okay, you know my thoughts on it. Those of you, I mean, anybody who was a sophomore here, you definitely watch this. It's part of the progress assessment. This is one of my favorite parts of the sophomore curriculum, and not for the reason that you would think. We'll get into that at the end. I want to let you watch it though, and then we'll talk. Does that all sound okay? Couple things I want you to think about as we go through here. The speaker's claims. What is the speaker's main argument? The guy's name is Simon Sinek. What's his main argument? What is the big idea? What are the little ideas that make up parts of that argument, right? That go to support this. What evidence does he use, right? Is his evidence solid? Is the analysis connected to that evidence solid, right? Can his claims be said to, come naturally from the analysis of the evidence he provides? These are all things you have to ask yourself when you're listening to somebody make an argument, when you're listening to somebody, try to make a case for something. So let's watch this, and then we'll talk about it. And I want to know what you think about it. A couple things I should point out. The 110,000 likes to almost 6,000 dislikes. Oh, wow. Overwhelmingly positive reviews. You have people commenting. The best part is the host did not interrupt him even once. Great job. Okay. Yeah. All right. So let's see what we think of this. Oh, sorry. Let me mute the audio so there's no echo.
What's the millennial question? Apparently, millennials as a generation, which is a group of people who were born approximately 1984 and after, are tough to manage. And they're accused of being entitled and narcissistic and self-interested, unfocused, lazy. But entitled is the big one. And because they confound leadership so much, what's happening is leaders are asking the millennials, what do you want? And millennials are saying, we want to work in a place with purpose, love that. We want to make an impact, whatever that means. We want free food and beanbags. And so somebody articulates some sort of purpose, there's lots of free food and there's beanbags, and yet for some reason, they're still not happy. And that's because they're missing. There's a missing piece. What I've learned is that I can break it down into 4 pieces. Right? There are four things, 4 characteristics. One is parenting. The other one is technology. The third is impatience, and the fourth is environment. The generation that we call the millennials, too many of them grew up subject to, not my words, failed parenting strategies. Where, for example, they were told that they were special all the time. They were told that they could have anything they want in life, just because they want it, right? They were told, some of them got into honors classes, not because they deserved it, but because their parents complained. And some of them got A's, not because they earned them, but because the teachers didn't want to deal with the parents. Some kids got participation medals. You got a medal for coming in last, right? Which the science we know is pretty clear, which is it devalues the medal and the reward for those who actually work hard. And it actually makes the person who comes in last feel embarrassed because they know they didn't deserve it. So it actually makes them feel worse, right? So you take this group of people and they graduate school and they get a job and they're thrust into the real world, and in an instant they find out they're not special, their moms can't get them a promotion, that you get nothing for coming in last, and by the way, you can't just have it because you want it, right? And in an instant, their entire self-image is shattered. And so you have an entire generation that's growing up with lower self-esteem than previous generations. The other problem, to compound it, is we're growing up in a Facebook, Instagram world. In other words, we're good at putting filters on things. We're good at showing people that life is amazing even though I'm depressed, right? And so everybody sounds tough, and everybody sounds like they got it all figured out. And the reality is there's very little toughness, and most people don't have it figured out. And so when the more senior people say, well, what should we do? They sound like, this is what you got to do. And they have no clue, right? So you have an entire generation growing up with lower self-esteem than previous generations, right? Through no fault of their own, right? They were dealt a bad hand, right? Now let's add in technology. We know that engagement with social media and our cell phones releases a chemical called dopamine. That's why when you get a text, it feels good, right? So, we've all had it where you're feeling a little bit down or feeling a bit lonely, and so you send out 10 texts to 10 friends, hi, 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 because it feels good when you get a response, right? Right? It's why we count the likes. It's why we go back 10 times to see if my Instagram is growing slower, did I do something wrong? Do they not like me anymore, right? The trauma for young kids to be unfriended, right? Because we know when you get a hit of dopamine, which feels good. It's why we like it. It's why we keep going back to it. Dopamine is the exact same chemical that makes us feel good when we smoke, when we drink, and when we gamble. In other words, it's highly, highly addictive, right? We have age restrictions on smoking, gambling, and alcohol, and we have no age restrictions on social media and cell phones, which is the equivalent of opening up the liquor cabinet and saying to our teenagers, hey, by the way, this adolescence thing, if it gets you down. But that's basically what's happening. Right? That's basically what happened. You have an entire generation that has access to an addictive, numbing chemical called dopamine through social media and cell phones as they're going through the high stress of adolescence. Why is this important? Almost every alcoholic discovered alcohol when they were teenagers. When we're very, very young, the only approval we need is the approval of our parents. And as we go through adolescence, we make this transition where we now need the approval of our peers. Very frustrating for our parents, very important for us. It allows us to acculturate outside of our immediate families into the broader tribe, right? It's a highly, highly stressful and anxious period of our lives, and we're supposed to learn to rely on our friends. Some people, quite by accident, discover alcohol and numbing effects of dopamine to help them cope with the stresses and anxieties of adolescence. Unfortunately, that becomes hardwired in their brains, and for the rest of their lives, when they suffer significant stress, they will not turn to a person, they will turn to the bottle. Social stress, financial stress, career stress, that's pretty much the primary reasons why an alcoholic drinks, right? What's happening is because we're allowing unfettered access to these dopamine-producing devices and media, basically it's becoming hardwired, and what we're seeing is as they grow older, too many kids don't know how to form deep, meaningful relationships. Their words, not mine. They will admit that many of their friendships are superficial. They will admit that their friends, that they don't count on their friends, they don't rely on their friends, they have fun with their friends, but they also know that their friends will cancel on them as something better comes along. Deep, meaningful relationships are not there because they never practice the skill set, and worse, they don't have the coping mechanisms to deal with stress. So when significant stress starts to show up in their lives, they're not turning to a person, they're turning to a device, they're turning to social media, they're turning to these things which offer temporary relief. We know, the science is clear, we know that people who spend more time on Facebook suffer higher rates of depression than people who spend less time on Facebook, right? These things balanced. Alcohol is not bad, too much alcohol is bad. Gambling is fun, too much gambling is dangerous, right? There's nothing wrong with social media and cell phones. It's the imbalance, right? If you're sitting at dinner with your friends and you're texting somebody who's not there, that's a problem. That's an addiction. If you're sitting in a meeting with people you're supposed to be listening to and speaking, and you put your phone on the table, face up or face down, I don't care, that sends a subconscious message to the room that you're just not that important to me right now, right? That's what happens. And the fact that you cannot put it away is because you are addicted, right? If you wake up and you check your phone before you say good morning to your girlfriend, boyfriend, or spouse, you have an addiction. And like all addiction, in time, it'll destroy relationships, it'll cost time, and it'll cost money, and it'll make your life worse, right? So you have a generation growing up with lower self-esteem that doesn't have the coping mechanisms to deal with stress, right? Now you add in the sense of impatience, right? They've grown up in a world of instant gratification. You want to buy something, you go on Amazon, it arrives the next day. You want to watch a movie? Log on and watch a movie. You don't check movie times. You want to watch a TV show? Binge. You don't even have to wait week to week to week, right? I know people who skip seasons just so they can binge at the end of the season, right? Instant gratification. You want to go on a date, you don't even have to learn how to be like, hey. You don't even have to learn and practice that skill. You don't have to be the uncomfortable one who says yes when you mean no and says no when you mean no and yes when you don't have to swipe right. Bang, I'm a stud. Right? You don't have to learn the social coping mechanisms, right? Everything you want, you can have instantaneously. Everything you want, instant gratification, except job satisfaction and strength of relationships. There ain't no app for that. They are slow, meandering, uncomfortable, messy processes. And so I keep meeting these wonderful, fantastic, idealistic, hardworking, smart kids. They've just graduated school. They're in their entry-level job. I sit down with them and I go, how's it going? They go, I think I'm going to quit. I'm like, why? They're like, I'm not making an impact. I'm like, you've been here 8 months. You know? It's as if they're standing at the foot of a mountain and they have this abstract concept called impact that they want to have in the world, which is the summit. What they don't see is the mountain. I don't care if you go up the mountain quickly or slowly, but there's still a mountain. And so what this young generation needs to learn is patience. That some things that really, really matter, like love, or job fulfillment, joy, love of life, self-confidence, a skill set, any of these things, all of these things take time. Sometimes you can expedite pieces of it, but the overall journey is arduous and long and difficult. And if you don't ask for help and learn that skill set, you will fall off the mountain, or you will, the worst case scenario, and we're already seeing it, the worst case scenario is we're seeing an increase in suicide rates, we're seeing an increase in this generation, we're seeing an increase in accidental deaths due to drug overdoses, we're seeing more and more kids drop out of school or take leaves of absence due to depression. Unheard of. These are all, this is really bad. The best case scenario, those are all bad cases, right? The best case scenario is you'll have an entire population growing up and going through life and just never really finding joy. They'll never really find deep fulfillment in work or in life. They'll just waft through life and it'll be just, it's fine. How's your job? It's fine, the same as yesterday. How's your relationship? It's fine. Like that's the best case scenario. Which leads me to the fourth point, which is environment, which is we're taking this amazing group of young, fantastic kids who were just dealt a bad hand. It's no fault of their own. And we put them in corporate environments that care more about the numbers than they do about the kids. They care more about the short-term gains than the long-term life of this young human being. We care more about the year than the lifetime, right? And so we are putting them in corporate environments that aren't helping them build their confidence, that aren't helping them learn the skills of cooperation, that aren't helping them overcome the challenges of a digital world and finding more balance, that isn't helping them overcome the need to have instant gratification and teach them the joys and impact and the fulfillment you get from working hard on something for a long time that cannot be done in a month or even in a year. And so we're thrusting to them in corporate environments, and the worst part about it is they think it's them. They blame themselves. They think it's them who can't deal. And so it makes it all worse. It's not. I'm here to tell them it's not them. It's the corporations, it's the corporate environments, it's the total lack of good leadership in our world today that is making them feel the way they do. They were dealt a bad hand, and I hate to say it, but it's the company's responsibility. Sucks to be you, like we have no choice, right? This is what we got, and I wish that society and their parents did a better job. They didn't. So we're getting them in our companies, and we now have to pick up the slack. We have to work extra hard to figure out the ways that we build their confidence. We have to work extra hard to find ways to teach them the social skills that they're missing out on. There should be no cell phones in conference rooms. None. Zero. And I don't mean the kind of like sitting outside waiting to text. I mean like when you're sitting and waiting for a meeting to start, this is what we all do. We all sit here and wait for the meeting to start. Meeting starting? Okay. And we start the meeting. No, that's not how relationships are formed. Remember we talked about it's the little things? Relationships are formed this way. We're waiting for a meeting to start and we go, how's your dad? I heard he was in the hospital. Oh, he's really good. Thanks for asking. He's actually at home now. Oh, I'm really glad. That was really amazing. I know, it was really scary for a while. That's how you form relationships. Hey, did you ever get that report done? Oh my God, no, I didn't. I'll help you out. Can I help you out with that? Really? That's how trust forms. Trust doesn't form at an event in a day. Even bad times don't form trust immediately. It's the slow, steady consistency. And we have to create mechanisms where we allow for those little innocuous interactions to happen. But when we allow cell phones in conference rooms, we just, okay, have the meeting. And then my favorite is like when there's a cell phone there and you go like this, you go. It rings and you go. I'm not going to answer that. Like, Mr. Magnanimous, you know? When you're out for dinner with your friends, like, I do this with my friends. When we're going out for dinner and we're leaving together, we'll leave our cell phones at home. Who are we calling? Maybe one of us will bring a phone in case we need to call an Uber or take a picture of our meal.
Goes without saying, come on.
I mean, I'm an idealist, but I'm not insane. You know?
At a heathen.
I mean, it looked really good. We'll take one phone. And so it's like an alcoholic. The reason you take the alcohol out of the house is because we cannot trust our willpower. We're just not strong enough. But when you remove the temptation, it actually makes it a lot easier. And so when you just say, don't check your phone, people literally will go like this. And somebody will go to the bathroom, and what's the first thing we do? Grab the phone, because I wouldn't want to look around the restaurant for a minute and a half, you know? But if you don't have the phone, you just kind of enjoy the world. And that's where ideas happen. The constant engagement is not where you have innovation and ideas. Ideas happen when our minds wander and we go, and you see something, I bet they could do that. That's called innovation, right? But we're taking away all those little moments, right? You should not, and none of us should charge our phones by our beds. We should be charging our phones in the living rooms, right? Remove the temptation. You wake up in the middle of the night because you can't sleep, you won't check your phone, which makes it worse. But if it's in the living room, it's relaxed, it's fine. But it's my alarm clock. Buy an alarm clock. They cost $8, right?
Okay. So we're going to discuss Mr. Sinek's arguments here. I think it's really important that we take a look at good arguments supported by evidence that are, have thoughtful, insightful analysis. I also think it's helpful to look at things like this. All right. I'm going to explain my thoughts on Mr. Sinek's widely lauded TED Talk, or not TED Talk, but conversation. This is based on a TED Talk he gave. What did you guys think of it? My sophomores are always like, kind of like, like they're like, yeah, I generally agree with it. I think everything he said was wrong, like start to finish. I think he's wrong about literally everything. I'm gonna go through why.
Well, Mr. Casey, you know what he sounds like?
What does he sound like?
He sounds like those old people that always blame all the problems on phones.
Yeah. What? Well, so why?
Like I'll be like, I have a headache, and like my parents will be like, it's that damn phone.
Yeah. Why is that the argument? Why does that argument always pop up? Anybody know? It's easy. There we go. Blame something. Look, you can go back. You could read like, Latin texts, right, from the heyday of Rome, where, people are talking about younger generations and the decline of morals and work ethic and all that stuff. It's like the oldest trope you can find. And this is just more of that, right? Like young kids and their cell phones, it's ruining society. It's like, no, it's not. It really isn't. there are plenty of things that you could blame these things on. Yes.
I think I definitely, like, we were talking, I was agreeing a lot with it, but I think now I'm thinking about it more like, this happens, and I guess we don't realize it. Stuff like this happens every generation, and we adapt every generation. This is something that we're complaining about now, but I'm sure in the early 1900s there was something they were saying this new generation was something was happening to them. Things were going downhill, but obviously we keep going. What he's saying is going to happen to us. It's not necessarily.
No. If people like him were right, music videos and skateboarding would have killed me long ago. I only skateboarded like twice, but I was really bad at it. Yes.
Yeah, I was just thinking about like every decade or generation, the older generations think like, oh my God, the Rolling Stones are going to cause America to blow up. And not be around anymore, or any music or TV show or anything like that. It's just the end of the world.
It's amazing that we ever beat communism with Elvis's hips on television. Yeah. Let's take a look at yeah, I totally agree, 100%. Let's take a look at why his arguments are not just generally wrong, but specifically wrong. Okay. By the way, if you like this at the beginning, don't feel badly. There are many college-educated, trained journalists who watched this and said, "Yeah, no, this guy has the answers." Right? They were completely into this. This is from the New York Post. Cynic, a corporate consultant and TED phenomenon, tapped into something big. Yeah, the bank accounts of corporations that were willing to pay this stooge to come and talk. This is from The Independent. Millennials are struggling at work because their parents gave them medals for coming in last. Generation-wise, most outspoken critic speaks out. All right. I give this talk to my sophomores every year after we take a look at the progress assessment. I call this How to Think Critically, or Why This Guy is Wrong About Almost Everything. I'm sure there's something in there that can sneak by as a bit of valid analysis, but well, let's just start. Cynic, first off, bases his entire argument on the idea of millennials or generations, right? I would say just even having a talk about that, why not just talk about astrology while we're at it, right? It's sort of the same thing. Think about it. Basically what he's saying is, my corporate friends are telling me that everybody born between these years is really difficult to manage. There's 75 million millennials, right? Okay, so you're telling me that uniformly all of those people are really difficult to manage. Maybe the issue isn't when they were born. Maybe it's management strategies. Maybe it's the fact that you're not paying them. These are things that are much more likely than the fact that, you know, they were born at a certain time and their parents raised them differently, and that's why they're difficult to manage. Maybe that's not what it is, right? Because that doesn't make any sense at all. Simon Sinek, because they confound the leadership so much, leaders will say, "What do you want?" And millennials will say, "We want to work in a place with purpose. We want to make an impact. We want free food and beanbag chairs." Okay. This is where it's important to note that Cynic is a corporate consultant. His job is to work for a corporation and make those workers work better. I heard somebody, is there a hand up?
Yeah, that's me.
What's up, Tyler?
I was going to point that out earlier, that he's a corporate consultant, which means he's probably going to be pushing an agenda.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, that's his job. His job is to go in and tell corporation, here's a solution, right? I'm gonna offer some of what I think are actual solutions today, but we'll see why Cynic probably doesn't offer those as solutions, right? He's saying people are unhappy because they want to make an impact and they want beanbag chairs and free food. I think he dismisses valid complaints of young workers, and he does so because he's employed by their bosses, right? We have to remember what side of the management table he's on here. I would argue that they don't want beanbag chairs. I would argue that they want to be paid, right? Isn't that why you're going to school, to learn things, so you can have a good job, right? Some quotes from the Bureau of Labor Statistics here. Millennial workers earned less than previous generations, but have more student debt, lower earnings, and fewer assets. So I don't think it's the beanbag chairs that they're mad about. But when Cynic uses that example, what he does is he trivializes the concerns of these young people. Maybe that's why they're mad. Maybe they're mad because they're not being paid enough, and because the corporate consultant that gets brought in and sort of lauded by all these people is not only wrong, but he's glib and dismissive. Maybe that's why they're unhappy. The generation that is called millennials, too many of them grew up subject to failed parenting strategies. He just throws this out here with no evidence. He doesn't even really tell us, aside from one notable example, what those parenting strategies are. Okay, so he's blaming the parents, right? I would argue that maybe what he refers to as parenting strategies, okay, it's probably related to high parental unemployment, home foreclosures, strained household resources, right? All of these things that have deep and lasting impacts on children's development physically, emotionally, and cognitively. Okay, so he blames participation trophies, right? You were given a trophy at a young age, and therefore you decided that everything you would get in the world would just be handed to you. Okay, his analysis here is so facile, just so on the surface, and doesn't even really begin to dig into the declining fortunes of the American middle class that probably have a lot more to do with it than do participation trophies. Did you all get participation trophies as children? Yeah, I did. Did you give up immediately after getting that first shiny trophy that says participant on there, like not even your name? Did you give up? No, probably not. You probably took that trophy home, put it on your dresser, and for some of you, it may be sitting there to this day collecting dust. Okay, it is probably a little bit of your past that is not all that meaningful. It certainly is not the reason why you are going to not be happy at your first entry-level job in the corporate world, right? The reason you'll probably be unhappy in that entry-level job at the beginning is because that entry-level job is likely to be awful. Speaking as somebody who's had those jobs, okay, it is not fun. Let's see. Hey, Sue. No problem. No, this is English 4. Not a problem. No problem. Yeah, so Cynic's failed parenting strategies pretty much just amounts to trophies, participation trophies, which, and he says some kids got medals for coming in last. And he talks about how this damages children psychologically. The only problem is it doesn't, not at all, not even a little bit. And in fact, it seems to help, right? Kids just want to have fun. That's why they run out and play sports. The winning and losing aspect is sort of put on them by their parents. When you first start playing sports at the age of 5, 6, 7, the concept of winning and losing is not something you really get. I mean, you do to some degree, but not the way adults get it, okay? Which is why most psychologists say you should reward the effort, not the outcome. Oh, okay, that's fine. We don't have to do that now, right? You're in high school. You can understand winners and losers. Totally fine, okay? For little kids, I don't think it's going to be super damaging to give them participation trophies. I love this statement. You have an entire generation growing up with lower self-esteem than previous generations. One of my favorite quotes in here, first off, no. Just no. It's totally, I can't say it's wrong because it's not even measurable. Think about that. The measure of confidence has been problematic for decades. I forget where I got this from. I want to say it was Yale University, but Cynic's argument relies on measuring the confidence not only of the current generation, but of previous generations. There is not a single method that has established itself to be empirically useful when it comes to measuring confidence. There is no way to have accurately measured the confidence level of one person, let alone of 75 million. And there is certainly no way to compare the confidence levels of generations that predate whatever method Cynic claims to use. Now, this may seem like nitpicking, but it's not. His entire argument rests upon the idea that this generation has the lowest self-esteem because cell phones. Well, according to whom? Where are you getting this data from? And the fact that the interviewer just sits here and lets him go on. Hey, Simon, Do you have even one data point to support any of this? No, he doesn't. He just keeps blathering on. Harvard research scientists reported that talking about oneself through social media activates a pleasure sensation in the brain, usually associated with food, money, and sex. All right. This is true. Unfortunately, he's cherry picking the data. I took a look at the study he was talking about. He chooses to use the negative dopamine associations rather than the laughing faces, positive recognition by our peers, or messages from loved ones chosen by the Harvard researchers. Yeah, is that part of the brain stimulated by food, money, and sex? Sure. It's also stimulated by thumbs up from your friend. It's stimulated by seeing a car driving down the road that you like. I mean, it's stimulated by a sunset, but that doesn't have that same sort of nefarious association, right? If you say every time you get an Instagram like, it's like you looked at a sunset. People aren't going to be like, oh no, throw my phone out. They're going to be like, oh yeah, okay, I like sunsets. I'm sorry, Simon, what's your point again? Dopamine is the exact same chemical that makes us feel good when we smoke, when we drink, and when we gamble. In other words, it's highly, highly addictive. No, it's not. Those things are addictive for other chemical reasons. Harvard did not say that smartphones are highly, highly addictive. They just didn't say it, okay? And here's their recommendation. Disabling your notifications for social media apps and keeping your display in black and white to reduce your phone's ability to grab and hold your attention. That's their recommendation, right? What is Simon Sinek's recommendation? Not allowing children access to technology, not allowing young people access to social media, because in his words, it's the equivalent, the same thing, right? That's what equivalent means. It's the same thing as opening up the liquor cabinet for the children. They are not equivalent things. Do I think you should spend less time on social media? Yeah, probably. Do I think that spending 3 hours on Instagram is the same as ripping open your parents' liquor cabinet and draining it? No, I don't think those are even remotely the same things. But Simon Sinek uses the word equivalent. He says they're the same thing. No, they're not. But this all works in support of his argument that the reason that these people are unhappy at work is because cell phones, right? That's really what it comes down to. Cell phones. When you don't have the phone, you just check out the world. And that's where ideas happen. The constant engagement is not where you have innovation and ideas. Ideas happen when our minds wander and we see something and we think, I bet they could do that. Coming from a guy who literally never invented anything. Oh, is that where innovation comes from, Simon? Great ideas like cell phones are bad. Okay, Simon. I will say that my counter argument here is a bit flimsy. But I like it. If phone engagement hinders innovation, then why did patent applications double in the 2 decades following the widespread use of cell phones? I understand that this is flimsy logic, but whatever. It's a really good source. This is from the Bureau of, this is the Patent Office, okay? I don't get to use Patent Office data very often in class, but .gov resource, good to know. If you fell for this TED Talk and you were buying into it, do not feel badly. Here are a bunch of other people who bought into some of this kind of thinking. This is Business Insider. The term millennial has become so controversial that an expert says many millennials don't identify with it. First off, how do you define an expert? I think that's a really good question to ask Business Insider. Like, there's a generations expert. You might as well just have that's like saying an astrology expert, right? Many Tauruses don't actually want to be identified as Tauruses. Like, who cares, right? The idea of generations is largely illusory, okay? So the fact that Business Insider is buying into all this nonsense, is it baby boomers' fault? Millennials are leaving religion and less likely to go back. I love these sorts of arguments, right? Like, ooh, which generation does, it's like, no, like what you're doing is you're trying to say that all these 75 million people all behave in this way and do these things. It's like that doesn't make any sense, right? Well, I can't say, what are there, 14 people in the room right now? Can I say that you all do the same thing all of the time based on, no. Like, I can't even come up with a rule to fit all of you. I mean, other than like basic things related to this class or, where you live, but the idea that your behavior can in some way be divined through when you were born. Yeah, I mean, this is astrology writ large. There are two types of American millennials, says an expert who studies the generation, and the difference between them is not based on their age. I love this argument. There are two, because it reminds me of Lady Betjeman from The Ballad of Buster Scruggs, the lady who says that there are two types of people, the upright and sinning. I'm still more in the people are like ferrets camp, but that's just me. Millennials and Gen Z get scammed more than their grandparents. Sorry. This is one of those things where, the headline and a lot of the article is about, they're looking for, what are the reasons why maybe, are we a more gullible generation? No, how about young people are on technology more so they can have their data stolen more often? Done. Figured it out. It's got nothing to do with generational anything. Millennials, the most unhealthy generation at work. I love this one. Yeah, the most unhealthy generation at work. Two reasons. Number one, this is clearly written from a management perspective, right? So why are they unhealthy, right? Is it like Mad Men? Are they like drinking scotch and smoking cigarettes all day at work? Because that would be unhealthy. I think that would not be a good thing to do. No, it just turns out that they're working incredibly long hours for low pay and are very stressed out about it. How millennials can invest with elite money managers without breaking the bank. This is a CNN article that's really just an advertisement for Robinhood, which some of you have used to try to upend some hedge funds by purchasing GameStop stock. All right. Opinion: one huge reason why millennials love gray hair candidates like Sanders. And again, boiling everybody and everything down to when they were born or some other sort of largely meaningless demographic distinction. Okay. Let me ask you, does any part of Simon Sinek's argument appear to stand up at this point? No. Yeah, his entire argument of you're bad employees because cell phones seems to wither away. And yet there's this overwhelming response, right? Do you know how much money this guy gets paid to go give give talks to companies like this? It's incredible. Incredible. And I think one of the reasons for that is if you had somebody who had the actual solution who walked in and said, oh, well, you should treat them like individuals, you should pay them more and give them more time off, they wouldn't be paid by the company. Hey, have a great day, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Casey.
No problem.